What if one of the most famous Japanese heroines in modern pop culture was never Japanese at all? Millions of people grew up watching Mulan, believing the warrior girl came from Japanese history because of anime influence, East Asian aesthetics, and internet confusion. But the real story of Mulan begins in ancient China during one of the most chaotic periods in Asian history. The original legend of Mulan comes from a Chinese poem known as the Ballad of Mulan. Historians believe the poem was written sometime between the 4th and 6th centuries during the Northern Wei dynasty. That alone already destroys the popular belief that the story originated in Japan. The Northern Wei dynasty was not a peaceful fairy tale kingdom filled with songs and talking dragons. It was an era of brutal warfare, border invasions, military drafts, and survival. Families feared the arrival of military orders because it often meant fathers and sons would never return home alive. According to the original poem, Mulan hears that her elderly father has been called to fight in the army. Her father is weak, her younger brother is too young, and the war cannot be avoided. So Mulan secretly disguises herself as a man and takes her father's place. One reason the legend became so powerful is because ancient Chinese society was heavily built around family duty and honor. Sacrificing yourself for your parents was considered one of the highest moral acts possible. In many ways, Mulan's bravery was not just about war, but about loyalty to family above personal safety. But here is where things become fascinating. The original Ballad of Mulan is surprisingly short and contains very little romance, comedy, or fantasy. There is no dragon named Mushu, no musical numbers, and no magical destiny guiding her journey. Disney transformed Mulan into a modern empowerment story designed for global audiences. The studio added humor, side characters, songs, romance, and emotional beats that would appeal to families worldwide. While many people love the movie, historians often point out that the film feels more like modern entertainment inspired by ancient China rather than strict historical storytelling. Another reason people confuse Mulan with Japan is because modern animation styles blur cultural lines. Japanese animation became globally popular long before many people deeply understood East Asian history. As a result, many viewers began grouping Chinese, Japanese, and Korean aesthetics together without realizing the differences. Historically speaking, there is no solid proof that a real woman named Mulan ever existed. Most historians believe she was either a folk hero inspired by multiple real people or a symbolic character created to embody cultural values. That does not mean the story is fake, but it does mean separating legend from documented history becomes difficult. However, women participating in warfare was not completely impossible in ancient China. Frontier societies and nomadic cultures sometimes gave women more freedom than later dynasties did. There are historical records of women defending villages, assisting armies, and helping protect communities during dangerous times. The Northern Wei dynasty itself was actually founded by the Xianbei people, a nomadic group from northern China. Their culture was different from later traditional Han Chinese dynasties many people imagine when thinking about ancient China. Some historians believe this may explain why the idea of a female warrior felt more believable during that period. One of the darkest parts of the original legend is how lonely Mulan's decision really was. She leaves her home knowing she could face severe punishment if discovered. Ancient military life was dangerous, harsh, and filled with uncertainty. One of the most emotional moments in the ancient poem happens after the war finally ends. Mulan returns home, changes back into women's clothing, and walks out to greet her fellow soldiers. They are completely shocked because they fought beside her for years without ever realizing she was female. The poem then delivers one of the most famous symbolic lines in Chinese literature. It compares male and female rabbits running side by side, asking how anyone could tell them apart while they move. The message was simple but powerful. Ability matters more than appearance during moments of survival. Interestingly, Mulan's popularity inside China has changed throughout history. Some dynasties celebrated her as a symbol of loyalty, while others were uncomfortable with the idea of a woman breaking traditional gender roles. Different generations kept rewriting her meaning depending on what society needed at the time. When Disney released the animated Mulan movie in 1998, the story exploded globally. Suddenly, millions of children who knew nothing about Chinese history became emotionally connected to the legend. For many people outside Asia, Disney's version became more famous than the original Chinese poem itself. The live-action remake, released in 2020, tried to become more culturally respectful and historically grounded. Yet even that version took major creative liberties with the story and introduced fantasy concepts absent from the original poem. This sparked huge online debates about authenticity, representation, and cultural storytelling. One of the strangest internet myths today is the belief that Mulan came from Japanese samurai culture. In reality, the original story predates samurai traditions becoming globally recognized symbols of Japan. The confusion mostly comes from modern entertainment blending Asian aesthetics together for international audiences. What makes Mulan survive across centuries is not whether she was real, it is the emotional core of the story that keeps resonating with struggling people everywhere. A terrified ordinary person stepping into impossible danger for family is something humans deeply understand, regardless of culture. In many ways, Mulan represents a question humans constantly ask themselves. What happens when duty becomes bigger than fear? And how far would an ordinary person go to protect the people they love? The most fascinating part of the Mulan legend may actually be its uncertainty. Historians cannot fully prove she existed, yet her story survived for over 1,000 years and crossed cultures around the world. Sometimes legends survive not because they are historically perfect, but because humanity emotionally needs them to exist.